FlightSimCon 2015 and Air Daily X. I'm DeAndre, sitting here with Ray from TrueCore Simulations. Before we start, think airline to sim training, but a billion times better for someone who's learning to fly. Ray, tell us who you are, tell us what you're working with.
So I'm Ray Bedard. I was a faculty member at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott in Arizona for 13 years. And a few years ago, 3 years ago, my students started asking questions about, Ray, is there a way that I can save money on my flight training? Because the flight training classes were getting crazy expensive. So I said, you know what, let's do something about this. So what we did is we started talking about what the problem was, and the problem was that the students didn't get a whole lot of information from the ground school, and they didn't retain a whole lot before they went to their flight activity. So what we did, and we did realize there was a big gap between the ground school and the flight activities. So we said, let's fill this gap. And how do we fill this gap? What the students want is they wanted to do some simulations, but not the simulations at $150 an hour. They wanted to do stuff in their dorm, on their desktop, because they are so well equipped now. We can do the simulation in a very, very contained environment. So we started by creating the whole private pilot course. And the reason for that was that that's where we lost most of the students. And keep in mind the academic talk is because one of the challenges is that if we lose a student, we lose a lot of money as an academic institution, but the student loses his dream, and that is not cool. So what we did is that we started working with students, and these guys actually created the whole FAA curriculum. 60 modules or 60 lessons cover the whole private pilot course. So what we started by doing is, for example, we're starting with aircraft familiarization. We teach them about airports. We teach them about marking. So somebody that knows nothing about aviation can take this course and actually start learning as they go along. Then we go to level flight, then we add straight flight, and then straight and level flight. So it's really, really basic, but then we move on to all kinds of like local airspace. One of the problems that most of the students have is how do you enter the traffic pattern? We've got a lesson just on that. And then emergency procedures all the way to cross-country operations.
Wow.
So we've got the whole private pilot course covered.
So there's how many modules altogether?
There's 6 modules and 60 lessons total.
Wow.
So, and what was really important is to keep these learning modules really short so that the student can actually learn a little chunk and then move on to the next little chunk when they're ready. But we went further than that. So once we finished the missions, my guys said, Ray, this is really cool, but not quite good enough. I said, what do you mean not quite good enough? I said, well, we need to kind of introduce the mission itself. I said, well, that makes sense. So it's kind of like the briefing that your instructor does before you go flying. You know, he's on this little whiteboard with his little markers and makes these drawings and stuff, and you try to understand that. But, so if nothing else of this whole thing, forget the missions, if nothing else, they read the briefing, they're much further ahead than they were before. So we finished the briefings, and then my guy said, Ray, this is not good enough. I said, what do you mean it's not good enough? I said, well, here's what I would like as a student. I said, I would like to see it in action. Now I read about it, I'd like to see it, and then I'll do it. So we came up with this system, which is the TCS learning system. Read it, watch it, do it. So you read the briefing, you watch the video on video, and then you do the mission. Want to take a look?
Absolutely. Okay, let's dive in.
So this is lesson 101 on level flight. So what I tell them to do is basically start with the briefing, read the briefing, watch the videos, and because in this particular case they need to learn how to calibrate their joystick or their yoke and their rudder pedals, I teach them how to do the calibration, and then they go to the mission. So having said that, let's take a look at one of the briefings. So what it does is that now it's going to open up a briefing page that's on virtual paper, and you can read this information and take your time to go through it. And further than that, keep in mind, I'm still an academic. I still want to understand how people learn. Is that you go in there, and you've got the information, and this is the briefing that the students will hear in the mission itself.
So just before they fly the mission, you get an option. Do you want to hear the briefing or not?
Exactly.
Whether they read it or not, they can click yes. Exactly. Your voice comes on, and you start explaining the briefing and what's expected of the cadet. And then once that's done, they're flying the mission.
You got it.
Now, what happens if the cadet's flying the mission and are you providing instructions in real time as they fly?
Excellent question. That's what I'm going to show you next.
Okay.
But before that, let's take a look at the video. So the student now goes back to the lesson, for example. Let me go back to this one. And the course. And now he can go back to learning what he wants to learn at whatever. And it's organized and random at the same time. So whatever options he wants to use, it's there. So we were, let's say, fundamentals. Let's go to lesson on level turns. Let's click on that. Now the lesson will appear. And we'll go and watch the video. So the video is here. Now it's loading the video. And it's the same type of information that was in the briefing, but now in a different format. And now the repetition is starting to take place. So what's happening now is that the video is going to load.
And this is off of Vimeo, is that correct?
It's all on Vimeo. We've got some of the free samples on YouTube also, but I'm using Vimeo because it gives me a little bit more flexibility in what I wanted to accomplish with this particular program. So this one is on level turns.
Lesson 104.
Lesson 104. One of the things that we did, which is really important, is what we call the number one reference point. If you don't know what a number one reference point is, we tell you. It's in there. And it's going to follow you through the 60 lessons, so you always have the same reference point. In the airplane, they use a little grace pencil.
That's right.
It's a little more advanced here. So what we're really seeing now is that the student sees it in a three-dimensional environment.
Unfortunately, our Wi-Fi here at the convention is not the best.
Yeah, there's a lot of people using the Wi-Fi, but at least you get the essence. So now, this is, you've read it, you watch it, now let's go and do it. You're going to go back to this button, and what it does now is that it's loading. This one up.
So basically, the simulator connects directly to your servers in order to get the training program?
That is correct.
So it's important that they're online?
That's absolutely correct. So what they're going to do now, once again, the server is a little tricky here because of the... and what's happening is that now it's going to fetch the mission from my server and load it directly to the student's computer.
Wow.
So he doesn't have to search, it's there.
Wow.
Now it's loading Lockheed Martin Prepared, the academic version, so that the student can actually use Prepared to learn at his or her own pace, in his dorm, wherever he wants. All he needs is his laptop, probably the joystick.
Let's talk a second about Prepared. So why not FSX? Why Prepared? How did that all come about?
Well, years ago, I was hired by Microsoft to do Flight Sim 11, and eventually, well, you know what happened, that story.
Right.
And a couple of years ago, when Prepared offered that academic license, it really legalized what I was doing with FSX, because the end user license agreement with FSX did not quite allow me to do this.
It's an entertainment platform.
Exactly. So in this particular case, what happened is that with Prepared coming online, I can offer that to universities, and the end user license agreement is perfect for universities and colleges and so on.
Training platform.
Absolutely, and that's what we're doing. So what happened in the meantime, it's Prepared is continuing to load in the background, but now the student sees the same kind of information, but in a different format. Once again, repetition, so it's starting to come in. We also have the PTS, the practical test standards that the student can follow, and that's what we've done for the missions. We've created a four-dimensional bubble that the student needs to stay in, and that's the criteria that we use, which is the same criteria that the FAA uses. So let's go back to the overview, and then I will minimize that. And now we're inside the briefing. Now, do you want to hear this briefing? Yes or no? If it's the first time, absolutely. Click on yes, I want to hear the briefing. But what's really important is that it's okay to fail. Students are not used to failing anymore. But for example, if it's the third or fourth time and I don't expect them to pass the mission the first time, but to have a success on the first time, so you don't need to listen to my voice over and over again. because you can also read it.
Correct.
So let's say, for example, you don't want to hear a briefing. So you go out there, I'm going to give you a little piece of information to get you started, and then I will give you the controls. So you're on.
Right.
So I'm going to be your virtual flight instructor inside of the computer.
It's like I'm lucky because I actually have you here in real life.
Well, exactly.
Even better. I'm lucky.
So I'll let you fly for a little bit. Don't expect to have perfection the first time. That's okay. That's part of the learning process.
Okay, so it's also written here as well in case I can't hear you.
It's visual.
And it's telling me I should be at 90 knots.
Exactly.
Now at the moment I'm about 60, so means I need to kind of nose down a little bit. Now let's talk about the first turn. Once established in the turn, pitch and maintain airspeed of 90 knots and apply nose-up trim for central pressure. Okay, I did not turn 90 degrees.
And that's okay.
And I failed.
That's okay. That's wonderful that you failed because that means that you're actually doing the exercises. And some of these missions are really complex. For example, the cross-country mission, if you pass that the first time, I'm giving you a gold star, man, because it's a really, really complex mission. But that's okay because you can go back at your own pace. In academia, we don't let students do that.
Right.
No, if you fail a test, man, this is a big deal.
This is it.
This is okay here.
And you can do it as many times as you want until you get it right.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely.
That's the logic of this whole thing.
Let's talk just a little bit about your background. How do you know all this? Where do you come from? And just the inception of going from you to this.
Okay.
The connection.
I was in the Canadian Air Force for 20 years. I flew P-3s, long-range patrol airplanes. I was chasing submarines around the North Atlantic for a while. And when I learned to fly, when I went to Embry-Riddle a few years ago, and also not just Embry-Riddle, but basically all the flight schools are using the same techniques that I was using when I learned to fly like 35 years ago. I said, there's got to be a better way. So the genius that I brought to this whole thing is that I asked the questions of my students. How would you like to learn? How would you like to absorb this material? And they told me what they wanted. So that's how I designed it. I designed it according to the students, and furthermore, my strength is really to use these students to make them shine in their environment. So all of this was built by at least, I think I used 15 to 20 students in CFIs that have built this whole training program for us and for them, really.
Wow.
So, and that's my goal, is to actually revolutionize the way we do pilot training, and we're there. We've revolutionized.
Let me ask you this. You're used to being in a classroom environment, teaching your students.
Yep.
As a teacher, you can gauge how each student is doing, and you know how well they're coming along. Now, in a situation like this, they're at home, they're on their computers. What mechanisms do you have in place to determine that this particular student is on course, they're doing a good job, or they may not be doing a good job? How do you know that, and how can you then convey that to the student so that they know you're excelling in this area, but you need to pick up in this area?
Absolutely. So let me go back to the website.
And most importantly, how do they know that they're doing it right?
I'll show you. So some people are familiar with what we call a content management system. In this particular case, this is way above a content management system. This is based on what we call the Tincan API. That was developed for the military a few years ago. This is a brand spanking new standard that I'm implementing. I'm one of the first people to implement that. And as you can see now, there's a bit of a dashboard that tells me what the students, what activities they're completing. So for example, let's say you wanted to learn how to make a spaghetti sauce. You know, how would you learn to make a spaghetti sauce?
That's a good question. I imagine I'd grab some tomatoes and start bashing away.
Yeah. Well, let me give you some examples. You can call your mom because she makes an awesome spaghetti sauce, right? Or you can go to YouTube and how do I make a spaghetti sauce? In a typical content management system, you can't measure that.
Right.
I can measure this with this new Tincan application. This is state of the art. So what we do is that we have some reports. And like for example, you can take a look at everything that I've done. Not just the success, but how did I interact with the website? I arrived, I progressed, I suspended, and so on. All of this information is registered for the briefings, the videos, and as of next week, the missions. This is revolutionary.
Now let's talk a little bit about what you're planning. We already have so far your entire, for the first course,
Yep.
from level flight to cross country. What about the future? Let's say you want to go fly an Airbus. Let's say you want to learn IFR operations. You guys considering working on anything like that?
Man, that's a really cool question. So what I did is I've worked on that for the last couple of years. This is the IFR course, and this is the ground school. I don't have any missions associated with that, but that's what we're going to work on starting in September. We're going to take the IFR ground school that we've done and add the missions and the briefings and so on. The IFR is perfectly suited for that kind of learning environment because you don't necessarily need to see the ground, but you really need to know where you are.
Right.
So we've created the system where the student has to actually, basically, let me back up a little bit. We created the system based on the FAA requirement that every student has to see every single page. But what makes us different from everybody else is we've put all the materials inside that one page. For example, before you go to the next page, you need to be able to answer this question correctly. But what makes us really, really different is that we've added all the pages on that with one click. You don't have to search through about 1,000 pages worth of information. We've got 20 some odd documents that are online, and that's really the cool part.
That's amazing.
So probably in September, when the students are back in class, we're going to have a campaign to raise some funding to do the IFR course.
Excellent. Now, for those watching and they want more information, they want to know how they can find you, learn more information, sign up for the course, what do they need to do?
They just need to go to our website, tcsims.com.
tcsims.com.
tcsims.com. All the information is in there. We're guiding them through the process.
That's excellent. You're doing an amazing job, and these are the type of tools that, in my opinion, everyone needs. I need this. I know that I could benefit from this extremely. I get on my simulator, I think I'm doing a good job, and I don't know what I'm missing. I don't know what I'm not getting. I never went to any flight school. I never had a professor show me this is what you need to do, this is how you do it. And even if you're not looking to fly an aircraft in real life, and you just want to become a better sim pilot and do it right, this is definitely a very, very good way to go. You're innovating and you're doing it in a way that a lot of the younger pilots these days want to learn how to fly. And you're listening to them and you're making it happen. I think that's an excellent thing, and I think you're going to excel. Do a wonderful job.
Awesome.
It's incredible. I can't wait to take the course myself.
Right on.
Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you so much,
and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.